What if I told you that you have been gifted 30 extra years of life? 30 extra years that previous generations never had. Well, we now have that due to a century of investment, primarily in public health. Take a moment for that to sink in. The longevity we've created is now causing a profound demographic shift in the United States. We are now what's called an aging society for the first time in our history. We're close to having more people over 65 than under 15. And this is global. Other countries, such as Japan, Italy, Greece, Singapore, have already reached this stage. And today, 1 in 6 Americans are over 65 years, compared to 1 in 20 a century ago. Now, many have framed this demographic shift as a looming disaster, a silver tsunami that will overwhelm and undermine younger generations. But here's the truth. Our longer lives are one of humanity's greatest achievements. And this could be transformative for all of society and all of us. But sadly, the evidence indicates that we're living in a blind spot and in danger of squandering the opportunity. And if you're thinking that none of this applies to you because you're in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, please stay with me. My goal today is to give you all new glasses through which to see this opportunity. Because this is both your future and our future, and how you view aging will determine where it goes. So first, I'll tell you how I got into this story when I was 36. I was working as a doctor and a health scientist, having a fabulous time, working on things I cared about. And one day, the director of geriatric medicine tried to recruit me to this new field. I was not interested, period. Except I'm a scientist, and I looked at the data. And at that point, I realized that these longer lives are actually an extraordinary achievement which we need to get ready for. In contrast to what the politicians and pundits were saying, and are still saying, calling this an inevitable disaster. The very next day, to my own surprise, I changed careers. Longevity was clearly a new frontier that would transform the 21st century, and I wanted to see if I could contribute to what it could be. I saw the potential to revolutionize the meaning of aging and to harness the power of those extra years. Decades later, through scientific advances and innovations by many, many of our fears about longevity and aging have been disproven. However, despite the evidence, we remain attached to very harmful myths. A myth like older people are all in poor health with poor cognitive skills. A myth like prevention of disease doesn't work in older people. A myth like aging populations are an inevitable drain on social systems and economies, and that older people are, and I quote, greedy geezers who are all take and no give. These myths are not only false, but they turn out to be dangerous. And I'm here to tell you that aging is not just about the 6 Ds we fear: disease, disability, dementia, decline, decrepitude. But believing these myths prevents us from seeing the opportunity of older populations and our older age. Science and research now show us those opportunities. First, that the right conditions can enable health in longer lives and into oldest ages. We now see that most older people are not frail, demented, or dependent, even though 80% have at least one chronic condition. Second, we've learned that older people have the expertise of a lifetime, which does not disappear on a birthday. Older people accrue abilities. We all accrue abilities across our lives that mature into elevated capabilities to solve complex problems and even conflict. And as people get older, they become more generous. And many develop a greater desire to give back, to support the next generation, and to leave the world better. We even have a term for that, generativity. This is a cause for some pretty grand optimism. Imagine seeing our last 30 years as a vast pool of wisdom, capability, and pay-it-forward goals. And think of the potential of scale of what 20% of us, or in 2050, 40% of us with these capabilities and motivations could mean for society and what we could accomplish together. So think of these as superpowers that we all have the opportunity to accrue as we get older. And imagine how the superpowers of a growing older population could be harnessed for generativity, to come together to tackle climate change, the mental health crisis, loneliness, the next pandemic or heat emergency, or to assure young people successful futures. Imagine young and old in partnership, and every child and young adult with an older person in their corner. Unfortunately, these superpowers can go to waste. I learned this from a patient of mine, a former patient. I'll call him Mr. CEO, a 67-year-old retired head of a large corporation who hadn't been feeling well for a while. His problem wasn't high blood pressure or early stage cancer or hearing loss or the need for a hip replacement. None of the usual suspects. Mr. CEO had a different condition, which I learned, unfortunately, was not uncommon. Just months after his retirement, he had gone from being on top of the world to being an invisible old person with no reason to get up in the morning. And this was truly making him ill. On my recommendation, he started volunteering for a cause that mattered to him. But despite his vast expertise, he was assigned menial tasks. In fact, he was directed to the corner where he could sit and lick stamps and put them on envelopes. My patient was no longer seen as an experienced, valuable individual, but as an old person without capabilities, and he quit. Think of all the older adults out there who could be leading in social innovation, in solving the challenges that we're confronted with, in mentorship, in entrepreneurship, but instead are sidelined. After countless patients like Mr. CEO, I knew we needed to rethink aging, which is called a role-less role in the United States. We needed to find ways for older adults to be able to engage and contribute in manners they value. That's why I started a program called Experience Corps, a program that brings older adult volunteers into schools to help all young children succeed academically, while also promoting the health of the volunteers. The program is built on the science of early childhood education, the science of aging, and the science of impact. And there are 4 key drivers of older adults' health that are designed quietly but powerfully into Experience Corps: physical activity, cognitive activity, social connection, and purpose. And the results are pretty fabulous. Students and whole grades perform better with the mentorship of the volunteers, and the older volunteers are healthier, less lonely, and know they've improved the future. Experience Corps has since expanded to more than 20 US cities under the auspices of AARP and has been replicated internationally. But now it's time to extend the success of Experience Corps to new programs with impact on many issues that would be transformative and, in fact, could be monumental given the potential scale. We have outlined the social infrastructure that will utilize this opportunity and realize it, the opportunity of longevity in the National Academy of Medicine's Global Roadmap for Healthy Longevity, which I co-led. The roadmap calls for new roles for older adults who want to give back and leave a legacy for the future. It calls for careers across the full lifespan that match people's evolving goals and needs, that offer retraining, and recognizing that jobs for older people create more, not fewer, jobs for the young. It calls for incentives to retain older workers and laws to prevent age-based discrimination, and it calls for designing our environments for people of all ages and to build connection. All of this must be achieved alongside a commitment to creating health. If we invest in the right public health programs, along with medical care, we can enable people to continue to be healthy and functioning into the oldest stages, matching their health span to their longer lifespan. If I indulge my inner nerd, I can tell you with great excitement that the evidence says we could create, with this approach, a third demographic dividend for society through investing in healthy longevity and enabling the full impact of the superpowers that we develop with maturity. The result could transform society so all ages thrive because of those extra 30 years, not despite them. I've had the privilege of traveling around the world talking with leaders about what the implementation of the global roadmap would look like, the steps to a flourishing society for longer lives. Some countries are already implementing aspects of the roadmap. In Copenhagen, public spaces are designed to foster intergenerational interaction and through that to improve mental health, reduce social isolation, and drive economic growth. In Germany, older adults and younger residents live in intergenerational housing, where they exchange companionship and support and also reduce housing shortages and loneliness. And Singapore intends to implement the full roadmap and is already helping older adults get back into the workforce if they want to, through training for technology and healthcare roles, and while it's also building opportunities for social contribution for entire townships of older people. These countries show us what's possible if we think about redesigning for the opportunities of longer lives. We will all age if we're lucky. The decisions we make today will determine the quality of those years. All of us, especially the younger generation, will gain from building a world together. For you, for your children, for your grandchildren. So where do we start? And how can each of us start? First, to examine our stereotypes and our blind spots, and then truly envision the opportunities of these new 30 years for oneself and for society. And then we can work together to create these opportunities for older adults now, demanding investment from policymakers in public health to build all of our health, and in the right medical care systems, and to help create programs for older adults that offer roles of meaning, purpose, and impact to give back in every community. I hope that you can join me now in both seeing and realizing our world of long lives, filled with an extra 30 years of health, intergenerational connection and collaboration, purpose, and benefiting from the assets of every age for a better future, where we all benefit from the opportunities of longevity. Thank you.